I mean, hello to whoever's out there listening. Yeah, so this is gonna be a new little thing I'm trying out here. We decided to do something different today, mostly because tomorrow we'll be doing something different. So let's, go when you sin, go all the way, and this is gonna be a different thing for the podcast, which I'm guessing it'll be posted up on. I'm assuming we're gonna throw it out there. Yeah, good. Say otherwise, I don't know what we're totally doing this for. But
I could put it on the podcast service too.
I would just say put it on the podcast. Just it's a new segment. I'm gonna dub it right now called Mini Lore, which is specifically probably just gonna be about L5R because that's really the only thing I'm really interested in the lore right now of. But yeah, this is a episode, I guess, of L5R Mini Lore, where we kind of have spontaneously are going to take a look and talk about a setting or an area within a part of L5R.
That is really tiny.
Yeah, it's very tiny, very small.
It's this island off the Mantis coast. It got shrunken by Kami, and it's a tiny little village.
Teeny weeny little village. And that's pretty much what we're talking about. And it's really mostly just a thing for us to kind of just talk about, just kind of shoot the shit about it, and really, discuss like things that we think are cool about it, things that we like about it, things that could be done with it. You could cook it, you could bake it, you could put it in a stew. It's great with a little Chianti, whatever, whatever's your flavor kind of thing. As you might have noticed, I am joined here by the general crew. I'll just go off of roll call right here real fast. I am joined by usually the Overlord, but today is nothing more than a stapled dragon to a celestial body orbiting a bigger celestial body, Obsidian.
I'm just a little guy.
I'm also I'm also joined by a wall that generally doesn't fall unless it does, and that would be Tetsuo.
We don't talk about that.
And then I'm obviously joined by the last troop of our member, well known for his wild tirades and very crazy thoughts. Mao, the wild card.
Hello.
He's so subtle, man.
It's so you just can never think what is he thinking.
I love how it's always we all give some response and Mal's always just
hello.
The
wild card. You can do anything. You can do anything, even nothing. So, two things I want to get off right off the bat before this topic. Obviously, this is probably not the best way to start off, like the first segment of something potentially new. But this is definitely spoiler-heavy territory because what we're talking about is called Nazo Mori from the Book of the Void. And to let you know what it is, spoiler-free as possible, it is absolutely a mystery horror type setting, which succeeds far better when you don't know what it's about. So, if you are looking for a bit of a horror in your life and a lot of mystery, and you want your DM to run it, and you want to be absolutely surprised by everything that comes your way, just take the Book of the Void, slap it in your GM's face, tell him to read Nazo Mori, and that you want something done there. And then demand it.
Chapter 6. Just
page 140 something, I'm sure.
All right, so let me interject here really quickly. I think Mao and I are completely ignorant to this.
Yes,
which is fine. But what particularly caught your interest about this town? Because it's one I've never heard of. Because I haven't read cover to back the Elemental book.
If you like your Lovecraft and you like your samurai and you want some Lovecraft in your samurai, jump into Nazo Mori.
Yeah, that's pretty much what Nazo Mori is about.
I can picture Cthulhu in a Kabuto.
Kabuki Cthulhu.
I put on the tentacle mask.
Coming to a theater near you. So yes, it is absolutely cosmic horror. That is kind of the name of the game. If you don't know what cosmic horror is, this is not the place to talk about it, but go look it up. It is absolutely a wonderful form of horror. If you really like, if you really like the kind of very bleak outcome sort of setting in horror.
It's very existential and not what's going to happen to me. It's does it matter what happens to me?
Yeah,
kind of way.
It's very, very different from Shadowlands horror, or at least your generic Shadowlands, which is more monster horror, based really most about creatures, like fighting and facing off the terrible forces of darkness that have always the taint, just right around the corner, ready for you to get its taint on, so to speak. So there's that, and that's pretty much all I want to say. So if you're fine with being spoiled and you love to hear talk about this kind of stuff, then continue on. You now know what you're getting into.
And we just want to spoil all of you that are
listening. Absolutely. Because let me tell you, Nazo Mori is amazing. So I will go into the story here real fast of how I did come across it, because I wasn't looking for it. In fact, I didn't even know it was in the book. I was actually looking at something else, which I don't remember because Nazo Mori has erased it.
It was because there was the question of, do creatures get void?
Oh, yes! I cannot believe I remembered that. So
4th edition, excuse me, let me rephrase.
Yeah, we are talking about 4th edition, by the way. The only edition I really care for right now. So yeah, I was looking up the question is that do creatures get void? And I thought, I was kind of like, I don't really know the answer to that. I'm sure I read it somewhere, but I forgot. So I looked it up and the regular core rule book, but then they were like, no, they really don't have the void. But I'm like, what? I wonder if the Book of Void actually does say something. And generally their argument for Book of Void is, well, not in the Book of Void, but their argument is that like only really humans or intelligent creatures in general have, and I'm going to get back to that intelligent part real fast, have actually connection to the void because they can make use of it.
Intelligent and no taint.
Yes, and that's kind of the big thing. Like creatures like essentially cut off from their mystical connection to like the realms beyond like what Jigoku is, or via the taint, don't have a connection to the void. But they also say that creatures aren't that smart don't have access to it, which is a really low bar to set because there are literal animals in the book that start off with like intelligence too, just like our samurai do.
So the reason I know it is because the entry on Tengu says they do have something similar to void point.
Yeah,
and in addition, what is it, Chikudo or whatever the realm of animals is, it is the farthest away from the void or something like that, and that's partially too why animals have low connection to it, because they are the children of Chikudo.
But that's hard to bite though, because technically the void is everything and nothing. So how do you get farther away from everything and yet nothing?
Because Meta, we need a mechanical balance.
You get your dirty logic out of here.
We inherited dissonance in my
voice out of my ears.
So yeah, it's really just a mechanical reason. But the reason we'll go back to the story because we jumped right off of a huge tangent already. And by the way, this is going to be very, very tangential. Don't expect like any rhythm or beat to this.
Don't expect the normal straight and shooting.
That is not us.
Straight and narrow, yeah. Normally we're on topic.
Always on topic with only facts.
All business all the time.
So as long as topic means a winding labyrinth of random thought processes.
Pretty much. Yeah. And we absolutely practice for it, you can tell. So I wanted to win the Book of the Void because this happens a lot where 4th edition kind of went through a lot of its own tiny retcons. If you were like read up the rules of like dueling and whatnot in the Book of Air, or like in the core book, and then you look up like why do people duel in the Book of Air, some of the reasons changed. For the biggest thing being is that in the core rule book it states that like duels to first blood originally required your lord's permission. But in the Book of Air coming out afterwards said, nah, you don't actually need your lord's permission to do duels to the first blood. So what generally was the thought process was?
4th edition was written by an unreliable.
Yes, it was. So generally what I kind of go on the idea is that like books that come after, like, you know, like that talk about something that came before, like generally the core book or something.
Consensus on canon.
Yeah.
In most places.
Yeah, so it would be kind of like, this would kind of like actually be the final say and all. So I went to the Book of Void to look it up, and I don't know where the hell I was, but I do know that wherever I was looking up some things, and then I ended up getting to like the items like about, you know, void awakened items and whatnot, and then there were things called like Waiden and Yoshi or whatever it's called. And then I happened to just come to the next chapter, and the next chapter was called Nazo Mori.
Forest of Enigmas.
Yeah, the Forest of Enigmas. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, I guess. And I started kind of like scrolling through a little bit. I'm reading up, and then the first thing that caught my eye was the Lost Village. And I was like, unlike many tales and legends, blah, 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 speakers of abs true, which makes it all the more disturbing, a village just fucking disappeared for no reason at all. And I'm like, excuse me, hold on, wait, what? Because I'm just skimming through it.
Say that.
You can't just start there and leave it at that. I'm like, hold on, what do you mean just the village just suddenly disappeared? So I start reading about the lost village, and then I start reading more entries. I'm like, what the hell is this? And
sorry, specifically, it's this particular legend is absolutely true, which makes it all more disturbing.
It's
unlike many tales and legends from the region surrounding Nazo Mori, the story of the lost village can be verified beyond question.
It is quite
by who?
By other villages, because. We'll get to the lost. We'll get back here real fast. I want to stay on the subject of the story. So I'm reading up all these things. I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. And I'm like, I have to tell somebody, but that defeats the purpose. If I tell somebody about it and I want to run a campaign in there, they're gonna know about it already, and they'll lose like the suspense. But I'm like, I have to tell somebody. Somebody has to be sacrificed to the insanity that I'm about to read. Who doesn't have a reason to live? Tats doesn't have a reason to live. So, so I go to Tats.
One thing I know about Tats is he is completely willing to die.
He just has nothing to live for. Not a child, not a wife.
I am totally not playing with an X-Acto knife on my table right now.
So I shoot him a message. I'm like, Tex, I don't want to ruin this for you. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but just go get the Book of the Void and read up Nazo Mori. And so, I leave him like that.
To transition from my point of view, like I'm at work, right? And I get this message on Discord from Meta saying, you need to go get the Book of Void, read chapter 6, you'll love it. I'm like, okay, sure. I don't get many things from Meta. I absolutely believe him. And I read like 4 words in, and I'm like, good God, he was so right. This is so fantastic.
I have not been more stapled to my chair reading on something than I was chapter. That is absolutely so how much I was into it. I mean, even the opening entry for this is just fantastic. Barring the short stories that they always do in their lore bit, they literally talk about.
The short story was great.
The short story is great, but what really caught me was the curiosity of Nazo Mori literally opens up with the fact that one, it's not it talks a little bit about the forest, but the greatest oddity is that it's not on any map. No map, maintained by Imperial cartographers, nor independently maintained by.
Well, that's not surprising. Have you seen their maps?
I know they're terrible, but here's the thing.
But specifically, and they talk about it later. Like they're paid not to put it on the maps. Like it's north to south. It's about 20 miles long and half the distance in width. But it's generally described as an oval. But it appears on no maps. Period.
There's no reason given, which means it's left up to you. But ultimately, anybody who does come there is immediately quashed or altered, and then oftentimes by Imperial families. Which makes it even weirder is because there's actually an official way station for Imperial cartographers near the outer border, and they just kind of show up and just chill out. There's one single cartographer.
We'll get to it later, I'm sure, but there was an Atomo who got some fun, interesting, exciting things happen to him, which is partially why the Imperial Court is like, let's not tell people about this place.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the story about how we got into it. So the area specifically refers to a large forest and the surrounding territory around it. Because it's not on any map, you as a player, or I should say, can kind of decide where you actually want to put it.
Which I love. Which is great. You can say it's near Kitsune Mori. You can say it's in Phoenix Lands. It could be in the middle of the Shadowlands for all you.
That's what I was going to ask. Like,
whatever works for your table. Whatever works for your table, they leave it open-ended. And there's a lot of
that for a few things.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot of questions you'll have that they do this with, which as a GM, I love that when they say, here's some answers, but not all of them, because we want you to tailor it to your table. And that's
exactly. It makes it easier to weave it into whatever you're doing.
Like in Book of the Fire, they have that one dojo of I don't remember what it's called.
The thousand kata or something like that.
1,000 techniques or something.
Yeah.
Where
1,000 years of steel.
No, it's the dojo I was showing you.
It's the dojo where it's like a mixture of everybody, but it has a lot of its roots traced back to
Akodo. It's on some plains somewhere.
Yeah.
Whatever plains you want to put it on.
So but I mean that's what Nazo Mori is. What makes it super interesting is that you go into the brief history about it, and They're generally a lot of incidents kind of detailed around this, but there's not tons of information on it. Just some weird things. But apparently the villages are stated to, though through infrequently cited lore, they have essentially been there since the dawn of the Empire. Making them effectively among the oldest standing villages in Rokugan, though they never brag about that. It's not really something they want to make a claim about anyway.
Yeah, like they talk about how a lot of villages claim that very statement, and the villages around Nazo Mori don't want people to know, which is very unique in the L5R setting.
Yeah.
And it's
so the surrounding
they don't want no trouble or glory.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
They take no pride in the fact, and generally they're actually pretty reluctant to speak about it. What makes it more interesting, and this is really perfect for L5R as well, because in L5R, a big thing about lore is that the heavens and the celestial bodies are heavily utilized to kind of tell people's futures and speak of their portents about them and whatnot. So the one of the things that's kind of noticed that in the original early legends of why they really don't want to talk about is that something ominous and astrological in nature like happened, an event that just really shaped the sky, and something apparently fell into the forest nearby that killed effectively all the livestock, or most of the livestock, all the villages.
All animals were gone.
Yeah,
but very specifically the animals. Period.
Yeah, not people, not the grass, not water or anything. Nothing was damaged. It was just animals.
Nothing was damaged. No broken bowels, but all the animals were gone.
And that kind of really sets the point for it, because there are plenty of things in the area that are just weird, and that goes back to like we were talking about the Lost Village. The Lost Village is quite literally a village who, for whatever reason, just disappeared. Everybody gone. 200 plus souls just vanished.
And we'll talk about that myth in a minute, but one of the things like that is amazing about this is, as much as a lot of Rokugan is not perfectly historically detailed, and there's a lot of liberties taken and a lot of filling in the gaps, Nazo Mori, like some of the stuff I don't know if we're going to fully go over everything, but some of the stuff is very well documented, which is not the norm for Rokugan in general. That's how serious they take this weird-ass crap that happens.
But that's what makes it all the much better, because, like, unlike regular Rokugan, where generally it's kind of expected that everything's generally written well down, this Nazo Mori, everything about Nazo Mori is generally immensely well documented. It's just that it's not generally, nobody cares, because it's like a small area off in the distance. Nobody cares about it.
And beyond that, what is well documented is so nebulous. It invokes those Lovecraftian cosmic horror aspects, because not like normal L5R, people are trying to figure out these mysteries, and they don't.
Yeah.
Just don't. Like, I don't have any more statement to add to that. Like, it's just, it's very Lovecraftian in that sense, because it breaks the mind. Like, anyway, we'll keep going.
No, I mean, you're right though. Just everything about the area really does fall into the concept of it. There's definitely documented things like, just to go down the brief history. I mean, we've talked about the Lost Village, which is absolutely true. It's documented. The nearby villages, which there was originally 4 major settlements, Lost Village being one of them. The last 3 are Sacred Forest, Ironheart, and the Laughing Plains, which are more better described later on down. But for whatever reason, they ended up not hearing from everybody, and when they returned back, when like other people came to the Lost Village, everybody was just gone. They were having the Lost Village was having some reason to have a festival merriment. Yes.
And like a large portion of I don't think it was a large portion. I think it was only
okay, so the story that goes for it is specifically that they were having a festival and displays of merriment, and then during one of those such occasions, a group of villagers became inebriated, and they carried their celebration to the forest itself, lighting a great bonfire, dancing and singing along the night. That is the only thing that's known, because one devout villager fled the scene, fearful of the forest's wrath. You have to understand that everybody near Nazo Mori fears the forest. They are scared of it, deathly afraid of it. They don't even talk about it. You don't ever mention it.
Paranoia is a good word compared to what you would offer.
It is quite literally worse than talking about the Shadowlands. Where if like talking about the Shadowlands is considered like, you know, a bad thing to do. Like bringing up the forest is just a non-thing. You don't talk about it. You shut the fuck up. I don't care who you are. You don't speak about it. We never speak about it.
You will have a bad ending if you say the forest.
Yeah, and that's pretty much like how people are. So they're terrified of it. It's not even like a disdain thing.
When you say the entire village has appeared, you mean all the people in the village?
All the people.
No, so not just the village, not just the people. The buildings, like the only thing that remains is the foundations of buildings.
No. It is just the people. They actually ended up burning the village down. Yeah, because there were.
Oh, that's right.
There were still when they did find them, there was no sign of violence. There was no symptoms of catastrophe or plague or anything like that happened. There was still food on the tables. Fire still stoked. There was boiling water that had tea with black stains on it.
Their own Roanoke.
Pretty much every soul, even, and this is the funny part, even the pets and the farm animals.
Oh yeah,
all of them gone. Every living soul in that village was gone. Everybody else is so fucking scared they just ended up throwing it and burning the whole thing down, and they've left like only the old stonework of where it now resides is there.
They just call it the Lost Village. They don't even remember its name. They just say the Lost Village because to even incur the name of the village would incur the wrath of the forest.
Yeah, and the whole place is considered a gravesite. That's where a village died. A literal village just died. So, but that is that is a very good example of like the really well documented that all legitimately happened. You have stuff like what's called the Great Beast, which was apparently about 300 summers or so ago. Suddenly this roar just split through the air, and this creature of indiscernible design but utterly inhuman demonic rose up from the top of the forest and was being able to be seen by every village nearby the forest, but none of them could truly define what it is, and every description of it was different, but they all claim the same thing. They saw something rise above the forest.
And I love, like, specifically it says, there's a line that says, a small handful gave more specific but contradictory descriptions, some identifying it as reptilian, others saying it was hairy and ape-like, and so forth. Which is just,
And many people who even looked at it just suddenly went insane themselves. It's very, like, full-on Cthulhu-esque.
I was going to say, can anybody say Shoggoth?
Yeah, pretty much. So that was like kind of thing. And then the other thing is blessings of the firstborn. Apparently, and this is really weird, some children, if they're born on the first day of the first month, that's most like related to
the first day of any month. But it's
yes, but depending on, but it's most related to a specific clan. That child is supposed to take on the traits of whatever that clan is most well for. Like, if your children is born in the month of the Hida, or known as the month of the crab, those children tend to end up being quite strong and have good endurance, but don't have a lot of subtlety or sharp intelligence. Not that technically always matters as in a peasant caste, but that's kind of the point. Those born in, like, the crane tend to be beautiful and well-spoken. Those born in the lion have, like, a tremendous agility and coordination, so on and so forth. It's only, though, it's so much loved, however. This is so much considered like a blessing and oddity that there are actually people who will go out of their way to find midwives who are particularly valued at being able to help set up or even force a birth, safely, of course, but force a birth on those days just so that your child can grow up to be more akin to whatever clan is associated with that month.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's the weird.
These are peasants too that we're talking about. So they're like, I want to emulate the insert great clan here. I'm gonna have a child that emulates insert great clan.
Yeah. So it's definitely a thing, but it does happen. There's no way to understand why it happens, but it happens. So this is kind of like, this is what makes the big draw for me, is that a lot of stuff in Nazo Mori is documented. It happens. There's no like, well, that's just somebody's story. It's like, no, this happened. It's just unexplainable as to why it happened.
Not just that it happened, it happens. Like, plural. Like, it just
in the case of the last one, it happens. Like, that's how it is. And that's what makes it so great. This isn't like legend or lore. These are facts. They go on. And that makes this a great setting for, like, if you want to kind of toss away the convention of, like, you know, hearsay here or there, like this legend and whatnot, and you really want something that's concrete, it's a great setting to use. Not that you have to use the setting for such a thing, but it's great because the setting itself gives not only credence to strange things being possible, but strange things that just do go on.
And a narrative reason as to why.
Yes. And it's very great. There's plenty of stuff more. They end up going into a few characters. They also talk about what's called these secret ruins. And the ruins are, for all intents and purposes, give a very short example of this. They're a phenomenon. They don't know how they show up. There shouldn't be any ruins in the forest. They're far too large that coincide with like an ancient civilization that, as far as anybody's aware, never existed there.
And this is one of those spots where they say, as GMs,
like, make up whatever you want.
Yeah, define what you want for these ruins. But the ruins exist.
Yes, they do exist. They're not sure how they happen to be there, but anybody who's ever gone to the ruins, and the ruins, by the way, are even more scary than the forest themselves, because anybody who's ever gone to the ruins has always come back maddened, if they come back at all. One of the most well-known was Isawa Hobaru. He is a character who went in there, thought he could understand it all, came back, and he just essentially went mad. He started to lose himself. He spent a lot of time just kind of going in circles and going crazy, and that was kind of like the person he ended up becoming after going through.
And like 3 months later, to the day, to the hour, he went into the forest. He appeared simultaneously in all three the living villages at the forest edge, and he ran to the center of each one of them, screaming about the ruins, wanted to take him back, went berserk, killed 3 villagers in each of the settlements, 2 men and 1 woman specifically, before self-immolating and burning away to ash.
What a way to go.
In all 3 villages.
All 3 of them saw it, yeah.
Time.
So that's just another crazy thing. They have other characters in there that kind of have like their own downfalls, but the point being is that going into the forest is a bad idea. Going after the ruins is just a terrible idea.
and to play on what kind of mentioned earlier with Otomo Temetsu, he like found out about the ruins through some of the writings from the Aisawa we just talked about, and he had gone into the forest, and then like 4 days later he returned, but he wouldn't talk about anything, and he looked like he had aged like years. And the only thing he would talk about is how the ruins were far, far older than anything they expected. And shortly after that, he disappeared again. And when he finally came back, he could not talk about anything beside the ruins. And to the point where the imperial family just tucked him away because he was insane. And
put that man in a monastery.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they were like, we don't talk about him. Like, before he had gone into the forest, he was like a forefront runner for the Otomo's, like, picture, the face of the family. And he was reduced to a gibbering wreck because he went into the forest.
The last character that goes in is Kitsu Shinjuku. Who didn't even come back. They went in, kind of, their parents, I believe, were Matsu. She was of Matsu blood. She went into the forest with 2 of her guys and never came back. But people started to see a lioness and 2 lions always nearby and in the forest, until eventually one inebriated peasant happened to stumble in and was found the next morning torn to shreds.
As if attacked by a lion.
Exactly, attacked by a lion. But apparently they ceased after this peasant was murdered to shit. They ceased seeing it, but it took a lot longer. Some lion embassies came along afterwards to check it out, but they couldn't figure out what was going on, and they decided to like just leave it there and let it die there. So, but these are like characters. Like, nobody going after these ruins has ever come back and. There's also the village we talked about earlier, the Sacred Forest Village. There's the Ironheart Village. There's the Laughing Plains Village. But these aren't the only places as well. These are just the most prominent ones. They're pretty large in size. They generally have something going on for them, though it's all pretty bleak and blurry.
You don't say.
Yeah, it kind of seems to be a running theme with cosmic horror type settings.
My favorite one is the third, the Laughing
Plains. Oh, yeah.
It's at one point, they used to be a area of place of great celebration and joy, but anybody who even moves there suddenly becomes dour and downcast and inward, introspective, and just gray compared to the colors that they used to be. It's just, ugh.
Yeah. I actually have a very kind of a personal love for Ironheart Village because there's specifically a Ronin who goes there by the name of Watanu, and thank you, I couldn't remember his name. And he was originally going to try to apprentice for the Sea family, but he wasn't considered good enough for it. So he ended up kind of wandering around practicing his craft, came on to Watanu, and just decided to settle down there, eventually being accepted by the peasants who were super paranoid of him even being there in the first place. And then even ended up taking, for, worse or for not that it technically matters, ended up taking a wife from one of the peasants, and he had 2 sons, and they just kind of continued their line of work there. They're not as superstitious of the other ones, which is a relative term. They're just, not as superstitious.
They're still super superstitious.
Yeah, they're still superstitious and the like, but they're happy because, with the Watanu skill, they were able to at least gain some sense of stability in life because his techniques did allow them to make tools and whatnot with better quality items. So there's that. And then Sacred Forest is the village that's pretty much closest to them, and they're like probably the most superstitious just because they're right next to the forest and they're very scared of it.
They're also the biggest and probably the most stable, I think.
Yeah, it's because they originally back in, because again, they actually have really, for whatever reason, they have really good like historical records. Originally they were making bank. Like they made tons of lumber production. At least until things got wonky, and then they slowed down to the point where they're so scared of it that anytime they chop down one tree after going through the whole rituals, they always plant 2. There's always more trees than they plant.
They originally were like chopping down wide swaths of the forest, and now it's like, there's a tree that fell that's dead. Maybe we shouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
Planting 2 more seems like a bad plan in the long run. Expanding this.
Yeah, I know you're expanding the
things
forest.
In the trees. Let me put more down.
Look, man, all they know is that they don't want to die right now. That's future me's problem.
Yeah.
So, but there's a number of other villages around the area which have different things going on for them. Each one of the villages in their lore bits, to give a little bit more on them, since, there's a lot to talk about specifically on them, have kind of their own thing going on for them. They have something interesting. You've got, like, one place is well known for having, like, a really good, like, a tavern and whatnot, and since it's, like, the only place around town, most people, it doesn't need even, like, bodyguards, because if anybody were, like, try to pull something in there, they would never be welcomed again. And since it's like the only tavern in town, you probably don't want to be kicked from the only place that's going to provide entertainment and drinks to you. You've got like villages that are like super poor, and they have something kind of going on around them for whatever is like kind of going on with their whole thing. You have villages that are dealing with like a curse of its disease or whatever. There's a lot of good settings that you can send characters to do things in, and have plenty of things that you can absolutely do with them.
So, on the disease point, what is it? How do you pronounce this? Ekibiyugami?
Yes.
Ekibiyugami.
Yeah, Ekibiyugami's Lament. It's this town where people used to go for healing because, like, anytime anybody went there, the monks would be able to heal them. And there was a saying, like, as long as nobody does anything to any of the monks who tended to the shrine made one command to the villagers: never ever use any plant whatsoever from the forest to prepare some remedies. So for centuries they did that, but eventually a farmer's elderly mother fell sick, and no mounting praying and care would bring her back. He meets a stranger who says, "Hey, there's a plant in the forest that can save your mother." So, of course, he goes out to said point in the forest to gather said plant, and suddenly the monks were like, nope, we're out of here. Ekibi Ugami has said, I'm not going to protect y'all no more, so y'all are on your own. And now, anytime you stay there for like any amount of time, you will get some sort of disease or sickness. Like, hands down. And usually it's painful and unpleasant and horrible.
It's a pretty crazy place. There's like a Shallow Waters village is kind of this. What makes it interesting is that it was like there was nothing really special about it, at least until like 3 samurai from 3 different clans kind of showed up in the last couple of months at the same time for all different purposes and reasons. You've got like a minor clan, Usagi, who's there. You have a Shugenjiko Asuka, who has traveled to multiple different clans. She's just a Ronin. And then you have Miyamoto Kaguya, who like arrived in full combat gear and like said like this is definitely gonna be a place of battle, which has got like the peasants all wigged out and whatnot. They have like their own reasons for being there. But for whatever reason, they've all shown up at the same time, and the whole village has been trying to adapt to that concept. They've started
within the same week.
Yeah, it was really weird. They just like all showed up around the same time. It's even caused the curiosity of like other samurai to show up because they're like, why would like 3 random samurai just show up here all of a sudden? Like other samurai, yeah, it kind of almost. They don't generally stick around too long because the samurai are just there waiting and doing nothing else but that. But it's just weird. But it's ended up like the village is kind of like trying to figure out what to do. They've ended like upgrading their inn so that they actually have better food. Like one of the smiths from like the Ironheart village came around just to, like, you know, start to offer his services to work on things. Like for whatever reason, 3 samurai show up, and now this village is like starting to get a little bit more prosperous. But they're all hesitant because it's really weird if 3 samurai just show up.
Like why are we suddenly getting this? Something's about to go down.
Yeah. So you've got a lot to play there. And if you don't have enough to play with in the areas within in Nazo Mori, there's certainly other spots that aren't villages that are creepy and weird, like Hote's Blight. Apparently, it's this dim fog, kind of like bog, that anyone who enters the swamp alone or even a small group returns different, happier. Unnaturally so, in fact. They tend to come back and they have like this pallor to their skin and a near perpetual smile on their face, although it doesn't reach their eyes.
Yep. Yeah,
invariably what ends up happening. I don't want to
be reminded of joy.
They end up eventually like alienating those around themselves with their peculiar behavior and mannerisms until they lose all human contact and just die alone. They don't become violent. They end up alienating everybody around them and eventually just die solo.
And it's like this extended Joker serum thing, like from Batman.
They kind of just become content with everything, but they seem to be really happy about it for whatever reason.
But the great thing from a story standpoint is the corpses from these people when they die alone, they're always found surrounded by a large number of these leech-like creatures that nobody knows where these creatures come from. Like they weren't an idea.
Well, here's the thing though, is that they don't actually state it, but it doesn't state they actually come from the swamp itself. Like they just show up. Because even the swamp itself doesn't apparently have the leeches.
Yeah, these leeches just like because nobody's around when these people die. So nobody knows how do they erupt from the body? Do they approach? Nobody really knows.
So you could definitely link it back to the swamp for sure.
Let's kill someone and find out.
Yeah. There's also a pretty cool thing, which is probably one of the more upbeat parts about it, is the Elder Tree. It's just on the outer boundary. On the western side, there's like a super large tree. And it apparently gives people visions, useful visions of the kind of like of the future, so to speak, but you'll receive insight into your own future, to your own life. And people will often come there and try to fall asleep beneath the tree just to like maybe secure marriage or get a favorable trade agreement or other desired outcome of some sort.
I think like some like pregnant women will go into there to get dreams about their children.
Yes, just to know like how to best send them along on their life when they have the child. It's generally considered incredibly favorable, and it's thought to be blessed by the 7 fortunes. Though obviously whether that's true or not is uncertain, but definitely is the legend that's going around. And apparently a few Shigenja have even communed with the tree, and that it does possess some rudimentary awareness, making it kind of this low-level living Nemorinai, so to speak. So it's legit. It's too legit to quit. It's that Elder Tree can potentially help you see into the future. So fall asleep on anything. That kind of thing.
Just hope you don't get no nightmares.
I'm waiting for the monkey paw.
There's no monkey paw to it. Although I'm sure
unless you want to make one.
Unless you want to make one. Yeah, exactly.
Well, but I mean, right, like any nightmare you have under it, is that going to happen?
Yeah, that's true.
You know, no matter how fantastical the nightmare is, that might happen. And these are peasants we're talking about. These are not samurai. These are not people that really know or necessarily believe in the heavens. So,
yeah,
what are they gonna do?
There's if you're looking for a little bit more mundane too, there is the Ghosts of the Forest, and don't take that the wrong way. We don't mean literal ghosts of the forest. There's actually a Ronin band, a small band, who are dedicated to just simply protecting and preventing the misuse of the forest. They are known as the Ghosts of the Forest.
I was gonna say, how are they still alive? But then that's probably the only way that answer that ends up.
They're
not in the forest, but they're of the forest.
They are super small, which is a big thing about them. They almost never have more than a dozen members. And they are long term. Like if you're a Ghost of the Forest, you're pretty much going to be there for the ride. They tend to get extra food from the nearby villages, especially from those of the Laughing Plains. They often provide their support. They kind of, they just kind of echo out this modest living lifestyle in the area, but they are super insular. They almost have no contact with samurai outside their own ranks. There was a point where they kind of allowed the group to get like a little bit more people during the clan war, but after that, it's been back to essentially like the 12. That's about it.
Didn't during the clan war, like people thought that Totori the Black Lion showed up and was part of their number for a bit or something like that?
That's written down as like part of the hint is like they thought that maybe he was there, but nobody's really sure. No, there was no record of it, and because of how insular this band is, there's no way to technically verify whether it's true or not with the years having gone by. Obviously you are free to decide what you want to do, and it would be really cool and interesting if somehow he had been there with them and he knew about Nazo Mori, how that maybe changed. It certainly could lead to even an alternate timeline if you want that, but it's there. Then they have it referenced in there.
Now, related, but slightly different, if you want the ghosts of Nazo Mori to be, or the ghosts of the forest to be real, one of the locations within the forest is the Lone Tower.
Which is a really cool spot, actually.
Oh, I love the Lone Tower.
It's pretty dope. The Lone Tower is apparently just a singular tower where it shows up in a part of the forest, and all people see are like the spirits of samurai manning this tower. Even the tower only goes up to like the second floor.
Remaining.
Yeah, the remaining of the tower only goes to the second floor. But you'll see samurai like floating like a third, fourth, or even fifth floor up on it, just kind of like doing watchtower duty, so to speak. There's nobody. But this only shows, and here's the weird thing, it only shows up to samurai. There's no peasant or Eda who's ever reported seeing the tower or its spirits. Only samurai can see it.
Well, and what's further great is that there is no indication of a fortress or castle or town or anything. Like, it's just this random tower. Like, it's not even any type of support for the tower. Just a tower. That's the only thing that remains of this place.
It's pretty interesting because there, as Ted said, there's really no record of anything ever being there. There really shouldn't be anything to be there because there's no need to be anything there. Yet there's still a story that goes around about how they came to be and how why it's the way it is.
I'm thinking from the Asawa who like tried to talk to them or something.
Yeah, he ended up having Isawa Hobaru. He did try to communicate with the spirits, and apparently his later reports were doubtful given the trauma he experienced in the forest. But there was some according to truth. Apparently, the tower was once part of a castle which belonged to a lord named Hazumi, and he was super ambitious and was repeatedly petitioning his lords to be reassigned to more prestigious duties. When he finally was given the chance to represent his lord in a court, he wanted his soldiers to follow him, but they did refuse to go with him.
The ones in the tower.
In the tower specifically, yeah. They refused to go with him because they're like, that's their job. They're meant to defend the tower for generations, and they wouldn't, become sentries in some pompous court, abandoning the duty of their ancestors. So he got super angry. He was like, fine, you want to guard the tower? You will! And he had, everybody deconstruct everything but the remnants of the tower, apparently.
Like, took down everything brick by brick by brick.
He literally just left them with a tower to defend.
And they did.
Yeah, that sounds like Rokugan spite.
Yeah, okay. Very oddly specific. It does. It fits really well. Like this, it's probably one of the more mundane stories, but it is still one of the facts that is it only shows up to samurai. Like nobody else ever sees the tower, and the tower doesn't sit in any singular spot.
If I'm some random person who got samurai'd by the crab due to the 20 goblin winter thing, do I suddenly get to see the tower?
Well, I mean, spiritually, you've now become samurai, so
yeah, sure. I mean, I guess it depends on how your GM wants to run the game, but technically, I mean, I guess it does.
Seems pretty inside baseball.
And if I remember correctly, didn't the Aisawa end up? We said the Aisawa. The Otomo ended up also writing about it before he had his breakdown or something like that.
The Otomo wrote down a lot, but I don't remember what he specifically wrote down.
I think he just recounted what the Aisawa did, but essentially, again, going back to the fact that it's well documented, he legitimately was word for word, this is what it is, which matched with what the Aisawa said. And at this point in time, those were the only two that went in that far into the village. Into the forest. They were the only two that tried to explain it. So the fact that both of them, and again, they were both samurai, one of which was an imperial samurai, said, this is what it is, that's probably what it is.
Yeah. But if you're not looking for towers, there is a couple cool places. One that'll make for, I think, a dungeon. But the first one is called the which is really interesting. It's a very peculiar spot. The whole area is that Nazo Mori isn't exactly what they describe as a dense forest, but it doesn't have clearings all that much. But this the glade is this one spot that's just perfectly designed circle that is just absolutely the thick grass just seems to indicate the soil is rich, yet trees never grow into it. Nothing will move in there at all. What's weird about it?
It's super high.
Yeah, the grass is super. It's definitely got good soil, not bad. The flora there show it for sure. Animals don't even go into the spot. And what's weird is that some say if you visit it at certain points of the night or at night, and you look at the sky, all the stars are wrong. They're completely out of place. Which if you know anything about Rokugan, like I said earlier, it's that really tweaks Rokugani's out, because that's pretty much the heavens being completely flip-flopped all over the place.
I was going to ask if there was any cosmic events or anything, obviously, since it does seem rather,
and I think they specifically mentioned that the unicorn are they know the different configurations, and even they are truly frightened by the different configurations. Even though they've been a good bit outside of the Empire, even they are the stars are friggin' wrong.
Yeah. It's they kind of mentioned that, I think they said apart from the Rokugan, I have not seen stars in different configurations. It's really just not a thing for them. A lot of so some theories that are shot over for it is that it's technically not a part of Rokugan. It's not actually a part of it, and it's from it's another place of a spirit realm altogether that's piercing through the veil and whatnot. Or that it's a part of the land that never fell under the reign of Hante and thus remains untouched from the Celestial Order. Nobody really knows. What they do know, however, is that the glade is not always empty. Some people who approach the glade are reported to see cloaked figures who are gathering. They're whispering amongst one another, and anybody who continues to approach, they just vanish like ghosts or spirits. However, apparently a few tales do state that if one of them turns to the visitors just along the show the face, they have this eerie beauty to them. Nobody really knows what they are, if they maybe just spirits, shapes as a ghost, or just people.
I'm getting a really Fae vibe.
Yeah, nobody really knows what they are, but all they do know is that they do exist and it happens if the stories are to believed. But enough.
If I remember correctly, I believe like you can hear them saying Finklui Mingwafla Cthulhu.
No, I don't think they say that specifically. It's very hard to translate to Rokuganese. But
it definitely like gives that
it definitely there's definitely more to the glade around there, but if you're kind of wanting to run something about that, there's that. Or if you want to run a really cool dungeon delve, if you've played Bloodborne, you probably know about the Chalice. Chalice Dungeon, I believe it's called.
Yes.
The Chalice Dungeon.
Yes. There's an area called the Den, which, for whatever reason, is like this humongous set of tunnels, like all over the area. Nobody's really sure exactly where they come from, where they are, and it's almost impossible to technically even find them, even though they're apparently like go on and on for ages. But that there's this underground set of tunnels that weaves and winds itself all across the area of Nazo Mori, which is...
Do they change?
No one's really certain. It's really up to your GM, but they kind of leave it as like this idea is that these tunnels are really weird, and they are all over the place, but it's not always easy to find them.
And it's also implied that at any point walking through the forest, you may step on a weakened, archway of the tunnels, and you may fall suddenly into them.
Yeah. Most people who like end up falling them end up starving to death, or eventually find their back to their surface in a confused or frightened state. But like, there's definitely things that live down there. Because one of the guys who kind of came back stated like he was being skulked by like some creature or animal in his time down there. He barely got out alive. Didn't he like
show up like in town?
He showed up in town, and here's
skull that he had like it was an animal skull. Everybody knew it wasn't human, but it looked like
exactly
no animal they could see. They knew.
Showed up in town, like again with most things in this area. He showed up in town like with his wild story. Like nobody wanted to believe him, but he had a skull of this animal they had never seen before, which could be mundane if you want to be like kind of like subvert my expectations. Or it could be something completely eerie and crazy, but he came back with a skull of an animal that nobody could really verify of what it was, because it certainly didn't belong to anything normal around the area. So you have the Den, and that
whole story so much reminds me of the Lovecraft story Under the Pyramids, which in and of itself is a whole wild ride, because apparently he says he got it from Harry Houdini, which has since been disproved. But regardless, like Under the Pyramids is so much of an inspiration for this. I cannot help but want to weave parts of that into this if I was a GM.
It's great. There is obviously, obviously if you're gonna have this section, they do have people of Nazo Mori, which is, I don't want to bash on this part, so to speak, but here I go. It is pretty much your generic, like, hey, we made a setting, here's some people for the setting, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And they're all kind of peculiar in their own way. They've all got their things going on.
They stat them out.
Yeah, they stat them out. They give them a backstory and whatnot. They do have like their own curiosities to them. They're kind of a bit peculiar, for being out here, and that's kind of like the status quo, so to speak. But they
but each one is seeking something specific.
Yes.
Which isn't.
So they're definitely out there and they're trying to seek something out, find something. That's pretty much just the characters you can follow off. So like a seeker, you get like Asako, who's the seeker of balance. You've got Tsurushi Akifumu, the seeker of vengeance. You have Matsu Kurenai, seeker of peace. You have Togashi Mutsumu, Mutsumi, Seeker of Questions. They're looking for something, but I mean,
you even have what is it? Ikirir, the Seeker of Yesterday, which is a Nizumi who's in this village.
Yes, they do have they do even have like They have like everything. I think they have like a non-human. They have a Ronin. They have a minor clan. They have a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and then they also have a Genjiro or something who is like a monk who is not a part of any clan.
Yep. We got a little bit of everything. So, and then right at the back end of it, after all of this, you have Madness of the Stars, which is a small little campaign. Small little campaign you can run. That you can just take up. You can just read it. You can run your characters through it. And then
do you fight Cthulhu at the end?
No, you don't get to bring Cthulhu to Rokugani Justice, but
So, like, I've only read through the first act, and if it goes where I think it goes, it's satisfying for L5R, but not quite satisfying for the Lovecraft fandom. Like, I want it to be... I don't know.
I'm gonna say right now, I have read through all of it, and I will say right now that, yes, it is... The ending really requires a more it's a heavy roleplay focus. If you're looking for like your stereotypical samurai honor type thing, and whatnot, you're not going to get it here. It is absolutely a heavy roleplay focus of more Rokugani flavor than it is the mystery horror flavor. It does its best though. I will give it that. It tries best, but I would say this is not the campaign I would personally run.
So one comment that's related to that I made to Meta after reading through the whole thing and part of the campaign, because again I haven't finished it, was if you were at all familiar with Mirror Mirror from 2nd edition L5R, it would need small changes, but I feel like Mirror Mirror would excel so much better in this setting than on the Lines of the Shadowlands where it's supposed to take place. Like oh my goodness. So
I don't think it's so much Mirror Mirror. I think it's that it's something akin to Mirror Mirror, but for this setting would work a lot better.
Because that's what I mean about the tiny adjustments. It's not the Shadowlands creature, but it's this cosmic entity.
Yeah, Mirror Mirror is definitely a little bit more Shadowlands flavored in that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. It is an interesting it is definitely an interesting thing though. I think it's pretty interesting. They have a very interesting antagonist. It also it also actually has the closest thing to it because we kind of skipped over a little bit of it. But a part of what Nazo Mori makes it really weird is that, like, when we were talking earlier about like how a celestial body fell from the skies, which kind of is reminiscent of colors from, so to speak.
Yeah, the color out of space. Yeah.
There is like the item that fell from the sky and into the forest actually is like an entity of sorts that is supposed to be the closest to what a outer god or great old would be.
Hold on, let me see if I can find it. I almost want to read it because, as you said, it's very much the color out of space. It has a lot of L5R to it, but it also is very... Is it the thing we think it is? Aspect to it.
So, like, the thing is, though, is that, like, and while I like what they did with the campaign, this kind of thing, is that it's mentioned, it's called, I'm going to ruin it here, actually say it, but it does have a name, and it is Rokuganified. It is Rokuganified as crap. It's absolutely that. It's not. It loses a bit of its punch because it is Rokuganified. Like I don't know how to put this. Other than that, it does lose a bit of its punch.
I think it loses a bit of its punch, but when you present it as the
lose a bit of its punch?
Possible explanation, because it preps your players to think it's less of a punch. When the full punch comes, they don't expect it. It's very much a sucker punch if this is what you lead with. If this is what you finish with,
it's going to be weak.
Anticlimactic.
I think it's a little bit weak. I like reading through it. I get what they're going for though. Like the setting is great, but the campaign, like the small like campaign that they give for you, I would definitely say is not probably the best. But
but speaking specifically to the fall that you were talking about, it says that, you know, according to recited lore, the villages existed at the dawn of the empire, blah 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 blah. But sorry, I'm reading through.
Get on with it.
I'm trying to read through the things we've already said.
Too late. Pressure on you now. Gonna make you take it.
The villagers don't want to brag about the fact that they've been here long before anybody else, because there's whispers that tell of something that darkened the sky and then fell into the depths of the forest with such force that the resulting shock killed livestock in the villages but did not damage the trees of the forest. And the strange story piqued the interest of a few scholars, and so so the scholars think it might have actually been the corpse of the kami Ryoshin, which, if you know L5R, he was the one brother, the 9th kami, who was dead from being eaten by Otonagu, or Onotangu, however you pronounce it, and was not able to be revived, and was therefore the closest to Fu Lang. But
I'm gonna press exit down on this story only because like he totally got definitely
well,
got
but he exists though. Like we literally have in the War of the Spirits, I think it is. He actually shows back up because he's like protected Yomi.
His spirit exists.
No, exactly.
Guards the gate.
It doesn't say the live body. It says the corpse of Ryoshin fell into this area. It's not the live body of a kami, but the corpse of a kami that fell within this forest.
I'll tell you right now, though.
Yeah.
The only problem with it, and like I like what they do with it because it's really good, but this is like why like the problem when you read the campaign, it actually kind of tells you what it's supposed to be, or at least what campaign anyway, and that's why it's like, oh, this is not how I would do it. The campaign, I will say this, the campaign is as lethal as you would expect of any L5R campaign that doesn't really care about you winning and whatnot. So if you like that concept of cosmic horror, it's definitely there. Like, you can pretty easily die.
And the bit I read, it very much has an aspect of, how do I word this without spoilering? The spirituality of intent and say what?
Spoiler. We already told people, you know, one of the compasses point. They're spoilers.
Yeah. So it's I forget the actual word they use, kaidansha or something like that, which is essentially the nemurunai of ghost stories. So it takes the physical form of stories, essentially. Yeah. And so by that thought process, it is an spiritual entity that grows and further corrupts through the idea of thought and stories. And that alone, even if you take out Ryushin, you take out all the stories of the forest, the idea of spirits that encapsulate just stories you tell is friggin' terrifying. Like, if you've ever read Michael Crichton's Sphere, it has so much aspects of that. I think I might be the only one that read that, though.
You might have been the only one that read it. I've never heard of that until today.
Yeah, it's the story of an alien that's underwater, and the alien is actually a thought. And so anytime anybody thinks of anything, the thing they think of happens. And you're under the ocean in this little, like, research vessel. So, of course, bad shit happens because you're worried bad shit might happen.
I think I have heard of this. I think I might have saw a movie adaptation.
There was a movie adaptation. Yes.
Yeah, I have seen the movie adaptation, yes.
Yeah, but anyway, but the enemy in the story, from as far as I read, has those aspects to it, which I love. Like on a story level, to me, is just so good. And as a player, how do you combat that? But it's fun to try to figure out how to get around it.
I think it's. I'll tell you right now. It doesn't do that in the campaign. Like, it doesn't actually do that. No, it doesn't do it in the campaign. No. It is still the same thing, but it doesn't work like that in the campaign. That would be something, at least what they lay out anyway. Like, your GM could still do something like that, but base wise, it doesn't do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, that's why I said, like, it's really unfortunate because it was a great concept. Like, the whole setting's great. They have good ideas, and then like the little campaign, I'm like, it's not that interesting.
But, like, because I read through Act 2, so I think there's 4 acts in the campaign they offer, so I read probably about halfway through. And, like, I swear, every other paragraph, they're like, the GMs may decide, as a GM you might want, the GM may decide, etc., etc. And what I love about it is the way they word it is so open-ended that you're not locked into the words they use, and if your GM decides to diverge from that, there's enough stuff in place where they still have things to play off of. And again, maybe that changes in Act 3 and 4, but from Act 1 and 2, it's there.
Yeah. It's definitely it's got its points though. There's a lot of choices you can do. Just like reading through nearly the there's only 3 acts, by the way.
Is there only 3?
Yeah, there's only 3 acts. No, there's 3 acts. There's like an after, there's a conclusion if you want to call that an act, but it's mostly just follow-up. Yeah.
That might, and I think they include the antagonist, and I might have like wrapped those into an Act 4.
It's fine. It's not a big deal, but yeah, it's definitely got stuff. What?
So, what level or insight rank is the campaign intended for?
As far as I understand, it doesn't say. So I'm assuming it's kind of designed for like the start, but they state like the story can take place during any season with minor modifications at any land or timeline of your choosing. The isolation and fear and hunger that characterize the cold winter can make that season.
Winter would be perfect,
like a perfect, appropriately season.
You ain't leaving.
Yeah,
you're stuck here.
But like you should. But you should remember that the focus is on the heart of the mystery of Nazo Mori and not so much on like the season itself, even if that's a pretty bad thing.
So I figured out what it was I was thinking of, and like so it's part of the adventure seeds at the very end of the section. And I want to share, as we said, we've already said spoilers, but I almost don't want to spoiler it for Obsidian and Mao who haven't read it. I don't know if you guys are planning on reading it, but the adventure seeds is what I was thinking of with the game of 100.
Oh, yes, the adventure seeds. Oh, I forgot all about those.
So the myth, or not myth, the legend, I don't know how to word it. So essentially, the game of 100 Candles, or simply the game, originated in a lengthy court gatherings as a way to stave off boredom. It's used to entertain, but it's also kind of a test of courage for everybody who's participating. Essentially, they'll wait till it's dark, or at least near darkness, and they'll light 100 candles. However, the candles are in a room, and then there's a room of total darkness, and then there's the room where everybody's gathered. And each person tells a story. Then they have to walk through the dark room to then get to the room full of candles and ignite snuff one of the candles, which are like floating on this watery kind of pool. But you have to also look into the pool, and the legend is the last person to tell a story, when they snuff the 100th candle, whatever story they tell unleashes those type of spirits on the world. And so a lot of castles will not quite do 100 stories. They might do 20, and then, we're just going to call it here because we don't want to possibly unleash those things upon the world. And that is a core part of what the villain is, but without filling in the blanks, it's probably in a different way than you think.
Yep. There are a couple of snake oil.
Oh, yeah.
They're really good. They're all fun little things you can throw in there. Yeah, the 100, specifically, I would say the Night of 100 Stories, though, is really good because it actually has, like, a lot of cool lore around it, and you can do a lot with it, and you can also decide, like, if it's legitimate, or is it just, kind of like a, it's just a fun little lore thing we tell, like, spooky scaries in the dark around a campfire.
From a Japanese mythos, it makes me think of Nurai Heion, what is it, the parade of 100 demons or whatever, and I can
the night parade of 100 demons.
Yeah, I could easily see it being an L5R equivalent. Like, after you get to the 100th tale, every demon in every story forms this parade in the heavens and descends upon the world. Like there's so many things you could do with this game that just, even if it's not true, there's things you could do with it, and say maybe there's a scorpion or a spider villain who is causing it to happen or something. Like, you know, again, removed from the campaign they offer. But the game of 100 Tales, if there's anything else you take from this setting that you could use in other campaigns, the game of 100 Tales is it. Like, hands down.
Yeah. A lot of cool stuff. What, like, I know we've been talking about it a lot now, but what are some questions that you guys have for this? Seriously. Benny?
Or wonderings.
I mean, I've been piping in a little. I don't...
Does it give any, like, hints or tips for GMs incorporating the more cosmic horror aspect into the setting? Because that's always a big problem. Trying to run a horror game, cannot get PCs immersed.
They do to a degree. They kind of, again, during the campaign, like almost at every story beat, they're like, GMs, you can do what you want. Here are some options, and here is what we're going with. There, if I remember correctly, I think there's like a sidebar or something that is specifically talking about those ruins we were talking about. And they're like, you know, what are they? Could they be a lie? Do they not even exist at all? Are they a memory? Are they illusion? Are they legit alien? Are they kami? Are they, you know, and it...
The chapter itself doesn't have...
It's on page...
It's on page 151.
151, yep.
There aren't tons of sidebars that really explain how to like implement a cosmic horror, though. Unfortunately, they definitely like if you read through the campaign, they definitely give you tons of options. Like as Ted said, like they literally just like throw ways of doing things at you and give you ideas, but ultimately continue the story along so that you know what's going to come next for your players. But really telling like how to do something, they aren't really doing that. They are really doing their damnedest here to give you a playground. And from you to kind of work through that by yourself. They leave things open-ended, but they're not giving you, like, direct, like, you might find, like, some ideas within the text itself or, like, little tidbits, but there's no, like, sidebars directly, like, saying to you, like, you know, make sure you try to do this if you want to run something like here.
Right. And I think that, for me, I think that that's a boon. I can see how that's a negative for some people, but if you read through what they offer, and you fully digest it, and then you turn around and you say, what is my group what are my players playing? What are my players' predilections? How do they react to things? What are they worried about? You can then take what they've offered, and you might have to do a little bit of research in the form of reading Lovecraft. But again, if you're already like, I'm using this setting, you're probably already familiar at least a good bit with Lovecraft. And so it almost, like, almost as a cosmic horror sense of it in and of itself, it almost forms itself the moment you start reading Lovecraft, reading this setting and going, how can Lovecraft meet L5R? And then they kind of form themselves. And and the reason why I say that is, if they were to offer, here's how you run this, it would actually take away from that, I feel like, personally. Like, because again, what's the scary thing about Lovecraft? The unknown. I think they even, like, hold on, let me
There's
find
actually, at the beginning, they actually do quote.
The quote
they literally quote him out of the campaign. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear. The oldest and strongest kind of fear is the fear of the unknown, which is pulled from H.P. Lovecraft. Although they sign as anonymous. Yeah, they keep it more in line with being L5R shit, but
right. But I think it's from The Whisper in the Dark. Maybe I don't remember which book.
I'm not sure what book it's from.
Right, but regardless, so if they were to like give you more solid ways of running it from a cosmic horror standpoint, I feel like it would take away from the effect because of that quote. because you need the unknown and you need the randomness of the human mind, to put it down in words makes it too structured. It needs to have that element of cognizant chaos, I guess. I don't really quite know how to word it.
I would say, from a more from a different point as well, is that like I would personally recommend to anybody trying to run a horror campaign is that it's gotta be nigh impossible. Some people just don't get into horror campaigns. Some people really enjoy them. Some people can't stand them. You're gonna find your different groups. I would say that honestly, don't really make it too much about horror. Make it about the mystery. That generally does a lot better. The big part
and
is
I think that was what I was trying to say, partially.
Yeah, I'm assuming so. The mystery is far more important sometimes than what is the payout, because like even in like games like Mansion of Madness and whatnot, eventually you have to know what's coming after you. Something you have to face off against at the end of it. Generally, that's not as scary as trying to figure out what's going on. It's the mystery that truly allows you, as long as you're keeping the players kind of always on like, what's going on? What the hell is happening? Why is this happening? Their mind is able to run and create a lot more ideas, and makes it harder for them to really pin down something. That gives them the sense of, at least if nothing else, stress. And I never want to say to somebody like, make that person really stressful. But in this case, you kind of do. You really do want to give them stress.
And a GM tip for running horror games, just in general, on the piggyback of that, is look at your players, not only their characters, but the players themselves. How are they reacting to things? Case in point, there was a game, I was actually a player in one of Meta's games, and there was this ghost in this rundown town, and for comical sense, I was like, I look over my shoulder for the ghost. And the ghost was standing over my shoulder, ready to decapitate me with a ghostly naginata. Now, I don't know if Meta did that because I said that. I don't know if he was planning for the thing to be standing there the whole time. I don't even want him to tell me right now, because regardless, I legitimately had ghost bumps all from the top of my head down to my toes. Like, it was like, holy shit, this is terrifying. And because he was reading into how we were reacting, how we were doing things, how we were approaching problems, that he said this is what was happening. And so as a GM, it's not this is what you do, it's what are your players expecting, and how can you creep the shit out of them? And you have to read them and their characters, which takes a little bit of experience. And you really can't put it into words. There is an element of an art there.
Actually, to jump on that real fast, well, a big part of what I did for like that was nothing more than I just built up what the adversary was. Like, almost the majority of the whole time they were in this village, they knew that something was going on because other people were dying in the village. They were getting absolutely murdered, and they were
in horrifying ways.
Yeah, they were getting murdered in horrifying ways, and they weren't like, random peasants. They were pretty ruthless Ronin who were just being straight up murked. And they found out later on were actually like Ronin coming from like great clans. They weren't like true Ronin or anything. They were people who had been samurai once themselves.
Right.
Yeah. So like the whole time though, I had built this thing up is that they were getting murdered, but I never really let them know what was murdering them. They didn't know for a very long time until later on when they finally got some hints and clues and realized it was a very vengeful ghost-like spirit. But until that point, it hadn't been there, and that was where I focused on, was the mystery of it all, because they were asking questions, they were casting spells, they were coming across a lot of things, and it wasn't the sole focus. One of the big things that happened...
There was a 2-story house where we led a horse in and left the horse downstairs to see if the horse panicked to anything, so that way we'd be alerted. I remember that bit.
Yeah. The other thing you could do is, like, you don't always want to focus on the main mystery of whatever it is that you're trying to, like, get them to be scared of. There's something else that has to be going on. Kind of like tiny subplots within it all. When, like, for instance, and the same example since you brought it up, I had them also come across a pretty bloody battlefield. There had been kind of a coup within the ranks of the Ronin that had gone on. So they knew that while there was also this other alien-like force moving around killing people, It could have been just some really ruthless assassin. It could have been something else, or it could have really been had in the spiritual force, which
some really clever plot by this Ronin. Like for the longest time, I thought it was just there was this Ronin who was really good at fooling everybody. Like I didn't think there was anything supernatural for the longest time in this event.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I'm being beating a dead horse, but absolutely, I would say Fallout. Another thing I would say is that generally put, if you're doing cosmic horror, big thing to note is that you should probably go into this game explaining to your players that you might throw cosmic horror at them, because cosmic horror generally ends with two kind of notes. One, everybody generally dies in cosmic horror. They win, they beat the bad guy, but it's always that kind of bittersweet, like we saved the world from not dying today.
Right. We stopped the cultists from summoning him this week. Who knows what'll happen in a month? But
we won't be around to do it because we're kind of dead now.
Yeah. If you don't die, your mind does.
Yeah.
Right.
And
exactly.
That's kind of the thing. So even if you do make it out, you're not normal anymore. You're not able to walk. You're going to be unable to walk away from this fight without severe scarring. Is really the point that it comes down to. So some people don't like those kind of games, and you have to also be careful to know that, like, you have to be kind of like up and up with your friends, like, and just say, like, well, when we start this game, this could happen. I'm just letting you know that this is something that might happen in this game. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, that just comes to knowing your table. And
yeah, but that's kind of outside of it, really.
And on that note, the other thing about cosmic horror is if you don't clue your players in that that's something you're thinking about, you don't necessarily have to tell them, hey, I'm going to do cosmic horror, but if it's something they don't expect from you and you just spring it on them, it's going to be very anticlimactic, and it's going to be very, how do I word this? Deus ex machina in the negative form. Like, it just is suddenly like, oh, this thing happened and there's nothing you can do about it. Sorry, rocks falls, everybody dies. Like, you have to see if your group A is open to it, and B, you don't even necessarily have to say, hey guys, I'm going to do this, but you have to let them know. Sorry, somebody in chat said Diablos ex machina, which yes, that sounds great. But you have to kind of let them know, even through your actions, that it's something you may consider. Like, it has to be something that is on the table in some sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's just cosmic horror.
Right. No. Yeah. Exactly. That's a note on playing.
I would actually. What I'd love to do run for this area. I really would love to run.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you said you didn't want. You said you weren't really feeling the campaign. I was going to ask you if you had what would you want to do if you were running this in this area?
What changes you'd make?
The changes I make.
Well, not even changes to the campaign. Just like what aspect you might have found interesting. Where would you want to take a campaign of your own through this place?
Just a rough answer. I'd probably just tell like whoever's playing this game is that throw the conventions of L5R out the window and don't come into this game like if you're a veteran player of L5R and you love citing lore that your character would never know. I would say toss that out the window because I'm about to change everything on you. And that's pretty much where I would start off, is that I just want people to come into this game knowing that anything that they know could be a lie, and anything that they don't know could potentially hurt them.
And anything you know, even if it's, or anything you learn, could be a lie furthermore. So the thing, because that's the other thing about the campaign, and as far as I read, was things you learn may be lies. So you have to be prepared to see through lies, even if your character is not a courtier character, and especially if they're not a courtier character. Discerning madness from reality is hard, and again, that's a cornerstone of cosmic horror. How do you know what is real and what is not? What is horror and what is not? What is reality and what is not?
I would also probably, if I'm thinking about it now, I'd also probably make the characters deal with more mental attacks as well. I might throw in like a quasi sanity system just to give it a more, if you really want to be like, you know, on the nose Cthulhu feel to it. But it would absolutely, I would probably take the ideas that, like, you know, your samurai can, you know, maybe able to be able to fight, and I would probably recommend that they have a decent fighting skill, but that knowledge, anything that they learn can hurt them. And that the more that they know will help them, beat the bad guy, so to speak, but it will also mean that the outcome for their character might become worse, because I always like the idea, and this is where Cosmic Horror really gets its jam, like bread and butter, is that the more you know, the more ignorant you are, the less able you are to fight the enemy, but the more you know, the more danger it is to being able to come out alive at the end of it all.
Yeah.
Grant Asaz Ryoshin.
Yes.
Yeah. And related to that, the little bit that I did read at the end of it, and again, this is the like getting into the major spoiler alert, so asterisk, plug your ears, etc.
They know. Just say it.
Yeah. There is the final confrontation. A lot of it takes place within the mind, and your players are fighting their inner demons. And like it tells the GM, look at your players' character sheets. What weaknesses did they take? What specifically spiritual or mental weaknesses did they take? Think how to exploit them. Separate all of your players. Each one of them gets their own battlefield where they are battling their inner demons. And the more they know of the truth of the campaign, the harder the challenge is.
I think that's actually really cool.
Yeah, the more real the illusion, for lack of a better term, is.
Yeah, that seems very fitting. Like, how much do they know about the truth of their past circumstances affecting the difficulty of the counter is pretty sweet.
You can if you can really throw them for a loop with that final fight.
For an example, one of the bullet points they give, and I kind of like it, is like a samurai with lechery faces off against a demonic geisha who at first seeks to manipulate him emotionally. So you have a whole encounter based off of temptation and resisting and honor and blah, blah, blah. But then once you finally get through that, the geisha resorts to physical confrontation once you prove resistant. So now you've done the mental emotional thing. You've maybe used all your void because you thought that was it, and now you find yourself in a physical confrontation with a demon.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You've used all your void, whatever. Like, and that's one of just the examples they offer. And I love that on a very deep.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull up my Tetsubo and roll 3, keep 3.
always roll keep 3.
I'm going to definitely keep those 3 die. That's what I'm telling you right now.
I'm gonna have that as my handed down item, so I can use that anytime I'm playing shogi. I rub my Tetsubo to determine what I'm gonna do, so I get the 3 keep 3.
Absolutely, it's your good luck charm, man.
If I perform shakuhachi, I kind of twirl it.
Yeah, just definitely. One other thing I might change on in the campaign as well is that during the campaign, a lot of the paranoia of the peasants is pretty prominent. But I shouldn't even say for this campaign specifically, but for my game or for myself, I would definitely make it so that when your characters are there and they're investigating and they're trying to figure out things that are going on, I would up more an eerie factor of stuff and lower more so the actual physical confrontation of things, because fighting really, like, fighting in L5R is not only starting off dangerous, which actually makes it kind of appropriate like for Call of Cthulhu type games and whatnot, but it's already dangerous, so to speak. But what I really want to do to the samurai is that, like, if the players move to a fight or they eventually get to the confrontation, I want them to still potentially second guess things. Not so much that they're not certain of like what the outcome will be. Like, they have their guy, they know who they're going after, and he's either going to resist or not. That's the end of the story. There's no two ways about that.
But how is he influencing events? Yeah,
essentially, what I really want more is that, like, at the end of the day, is like they might get the right guy, but they find something else about it after the fact, or they learn something that might either throws in a wrench of how everything has gone down, but ultimately doesn't change the outcome of it all, but just kind of makes them go, huh.
Well,
do we really have the right guy? Do we really have the right guy kind of situation? So I would really want to up that eerie.
Yeah, and a very Lovecraftian response would be, even if we have the right guy, does jailing him make a difference? Does killing him make a difference? If we let him go, does that make a difference? Will doing anything with this one person cause my opponent to have a negative, to have a negative. Like it might be where we just let the guy go because there's nothing. If we kill him, it does nothing. But also at the same time, as players, it's really satisfying to kill a friggin' cultist regardless of any other reason because he was a cultist and I want to kill something because I feel like I'm out of control right now. And I feel like, again, that goes back down to the GM to read your table. Are your players so bought in where they don't care? Let the enemy go. If they need a victory, let them kill the cultist.
I think the other, the more I keep saying stuff, the more I think about like other things I would do. I think a fourth item on it would be is I'd probably not make it too long of a game. Scary movies and scary stuff generally does better when it's shorter. You don't need it to be long.
You can't really do it's harder to do like a horror campaign and keep the tension up the entire time.
You have to have lows. It's mandatory.
And furthermore, it really needs to be over the course of a single session because, again, if you have it where you come back later, you've lost some of the tension. But even within a single session, if you start off high and finish low, that's much better than just, all right, we're immediately going to have a horror campaign this session. Like it needs to not even necessarily be the whole of what you're doing at the sit down at the table.
Yeah. I would that's why I say, but that goes back to me like why I say focus on the mystery.
Right.
Because that you can keep up and people are more inclined to follow a mystery because it's a mystery. It needs to be solved. That kind of thing.
And to give a physical example, again, coming from my experiences with that game with Meta, is that I think it stretched across like 4 or 5 sessions, that whole village thing. But the first 3 or 4 sessions was what's going on, who are the players, what are the Ronin doing, is there another Ronin, figuring out their patterns, looking at the village layout, figuring out the legend. It was the last session that really was there's a ghost here. And what is it doing? Oh God, it's after us. It was only one session where that was really the truth.
Yeah. So I'd probably just do a lot of that. If I ran a game through here, I would definitely make mystery the thing, eeriness absolutely there. I would have the players kind of working to solve problems through the area, but kind of always leaving it open that, is the problem really solved, or did you just kind of like, fix it for a period of time?
Or did you even fix it at all?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I like leaving the doubt. I like leaving the question more so than like saying like, did you even fix it at all? That's harder. That's really hard. It's very hard to do like an ending like that. I think that's really hard to pull off because a big part of the problem is that another big problem about running with horror in general. It's not really about Nazo Mori anymore, but so I think we're kind of done on that. But I will say, like, just as a closing thing, is that horror is hard because you also have to remember that what your characters know and what your players know from a meta standpoint, unfortunately, do mingle. It's hard to be scared of something because on a meta state, the players themselves aren't actually in any dangerous situation. The game characters might be, fighting for their lives, but the person playing them might be chugging a Mountain Dew while his hands like, elbow deep into a big bag of Cheetos. You don't know. So it's that kind of thing. So that makes it horror a little bit harder to do. And unfortunately, those two mingling concepts do make it hard, which is why, again, I stress the mystery and the eeriness over the actual horror factor.
Yeah, and like, again, when you approach horror, there's multiple kinds of horror, and things like jump scare or body horror don't translate well into
that's almost
RPGs.
All visual medium. That's completely a visual medium type thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it works to great effect in those. I mean, obviously, how many movies use those? But they don't work well in RPGs. And what does? The story, the mystery, the what's going on. Is the things I know the reality? Is the things I know the reality, but anything I can do with them doesn't matter? That kind of a thing is what is the bread and butter of RPGs, and so that's what you have to play up if you're wanting to do a mystery, a horror or mystery. Within RPGs, that's what you have to focus on.
I would definitely say Nazo Mori will give you everything you could want. even if there's nothing there that you find appropriate for what you want to do, there's nothing to stop you from making it because the setting is now encapsulated on the spot. Yep. There is absolutely a location that can be in any part of the empire that you need it to be for your game. And if you really want to get weird and tweaky with it, just like how, like, there's times where the same person showed up in multiple spots, you could say that Nazo Mori also shows up in multiple areas of the Empire at the same time.
It is a very good seed for ideas. If nothing else, it is, if you read through it, you will get a bed. Like, when I read through it, I got, like, 6 different ideas which would not work in the same campaign, but it gave me 6 separate encounter ideas to use as a GM, and that's what's amazing about this small section. It's very small. It's very small, but it gives you so much to work with, so many thoughts that you can play with.
Yeah, it truly is. I honestly, I'm really upset that I never saw this earlier when I originally bought the book. But I mean, like, I assume, like me, like most people, tend to buy the books, maybe skim through them for information, and then immediately go right to the mechanics section.
Yep.
Yeah, and
what's new for players?
I'll even happily claim that I do read most of my L5R books, but I'll be straight up honest. I don't read all of them. And even when I do, I don't always remember them.
Well, in the 4 of us, how long have we been not just familiar with L5R, but really involved with it?
I'm probably
And all 4 of us, this is new.
Yeah.
This is new.
I've definitely read through parts of the book, but
I'm not a fan of the elemental books. So.
Yeah, there you go. It's there's plenty of here to do, so I really, really would love to run something here, or probably more importantly, I would love to be run through something of here, because I'm tired of GMing a lot of stuff. I'm GMing too much, so I don't want to be a forever GM. I like being a player sometimes. So this is definitely a setting. If you're looking for Cthulhu stuff, if you're looking for cosmic horror, if you are looking to essentially throw away the conventional means of the Rokugan setting, and to say, like, what you know and what you understand doesn't matter here, and you should quickly adapt or die, this is a perfect setting to do that in.
Yeah. Yes. You guys need to read Way of the Shadow, the original OG cosmic horror.
I know.
Villain.
What the lying darkness used to be.
Who they ruined by making into the Shadow Dragon.
Yep.
And if mechanics make a difference for you, at the very, very end of the book, in the new mechanics appendix, for chapter 6, they have 4 new advantages and 1 new school for the Ronin Ghosts of the Forest that might interest you, and all of them are very very interesting. Very interesting.
By the way, I just want to point out something here really fast. Specifically, Mao, remember when you made your crafter character?
Yep.
That advantage comes from this book.
Watanu trained?
I believe it was the Watanu trained or the village one.
No, I got mine from the Great Clans? No, the one where it's
Emerald Empire.
No.
Strongholds of the Empire.
Yes, Strongholds. It's the Watersmith.
You're right. It's the you are right. I'm thinking. Damn it! Well, here I thought I was going to end up on a really good little note.
Well, regardless, the one he's talking about, the Watanu trained advantage, allows you to get 1 craft skill related to the creation of any metallic goods, as long as it's not weapon or armor. And whenever you make skill rolls in regards to that, you get a +1, keep 1.
Yep.
Yeah, why would I ever want to make a non-weapon?
Yeah, that's pretty much the only problem, is that that's a terrible advantage. Well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, so mini episode, right, guys?
Yeah, mini episode, definitely.
Mini episode. Totally.
I didn't say it was a mini episode. I said it was a mini lore, specifically talking about a very small bit of lore within the world. Not that we were going to talk shorts.
I fully walked into this expecting meta and over this, because we both love our Lovecraftian stories.
Anything Lovecraftian really gets me going. I like a good mystery, and Lovecraft does one thing well. He does mysteries really well.
And the aspect of horror I love is the mystery horror. I don't do good with body horror. I don't do
yeah,
good
like that kind of stuff is not that interesting. It's kind of like why the Shadowlands isn't super interesting to me, because I'm like, well, the Shadowlands is just this creepy, spooky, scary skeleton town, and there's creepy, spooky, scary skeletons in it, and that's it. That's all you need to know. I'm gonna come across an evil creature that's gonna tame me, and I'm gonna die. But this is like, it could be anything. It could even be a spooky, scary skeleton, but I won't know until we're there.
Yeah,
be a boat.
But the way they build it is maybe it is a portal to the Shadowlands or to Jigoku, just like the Shadowlands is. But the way they set it up, you don't know, and you don't know what to expect.
I would be so upset if my GM did that to me. It's like, you enter into Nazo Mori. As you step out, you're in the Shadowlands. I'm like, you son of a bitch!
I can't believe you
gotcha.
I build it up. You walk into the ruins, and the ruins end up being the lost Kyuden of the Haruma.
Well, it's interesting for me to hear your guys' thoughts process on that, because I actually am pretty much the opposite. I actually don't like mystery, sandboxy games.
You're dead to me.
Or sessions typically. They tend to meander and be badly paced in my experience.
It depends.
It depends on players. It's gonna be
yeah, exactly.
How much they plan ahead. I guess.
I disagree. I think it's the players. Because if your players are
I could agree with that. As well.
It's really both, but I'm gonna blame the players specifically because I'm mostly a GM right now, so it's obviously the other side's fault. I will say it's the big problem with mystery, and the only issue I've really run into it is that if the mystery is not well set up, then from the players you become lost. You're not sure where to go next. You're not sure what to do, and it kind of feels hard. Well, you feel like you've hit every beat, but you're not getting anywhere with it. And from the opposite side of that table, if your players aren't personally ambitious enough, if they are not looking to do things, mysteries aren't really good, because mysteries require the players actively go out and do stuff. And if they're more of the kind of players that kind of prefer to have a few rails and choose door 1 or 2, and then we'll go through that one.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're not going to do well in mystery.
Which is very much me.
As a player, if it's a matter of, you have to go through door 1 or 2, but whichever one you go through, you have to search thoroughly. It can be hard as a player to know at what point have I actually exhausted everything, and at what point have I thought I've exhausted every option.
Maybe we could pocket this for a podcast.
I think so.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Mystery sessions and games. Because I think we could go on for about 20 minutes on that.
There's definitely a lot to be said about mystery games, so, for sure.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna end this off here because I think there's really nothing else more to say. If you like what you're talking about, go read it up. Go buy the book. I'm sure it can be found somewhere, somehow.
Probably $20 on drive through, something like that.
Yeah, there's always the drive through, RPG drive through, which you can get for
and
good luck finding the hard copy at this point.
And if you're slightly interested, maybe even dip a little bit into Lovecraft, who is totally 100% in the public domain, so you don't have to pay anything to read any Lovecraft. If you don't want to.
And read Way of the Shadow, because it's basically a Lovecraft novel.
It is. Yeah.
Set in Rokugan.
So it's pretty good. Thank you very much for those who joined us. Much appreciated. If you haven't already, go check out our actual podcast and not us talking about one specific thing. It's Podcast of the Five Rings, our P5R podcast. You can find us all over the internet. We've got Facebooks, Twitters, tweets, twats. I don't know. YouTube's. SoundClouds, everything. We've got everything. It is linked below on my actual stream channel, so you can also check it below there as well if you're really lazy like me.
I feel like it's Lily in the background.
Yeah, somewhere. I know. Lily's like, it's linked below, and I'm like, I'm getting there. Lily, jeez, stop telling me what to do.
Where is Lily? I feel like she would have enjoyed this.
She was at work, so she couldn't talk about it.
Oh,
no, I really don't want to tell her anything about it though, unfortunately, because don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
You're just a worker.
She's the guinea pig. So
if she's the guinea pig, you have to tell us how the experiment goes.
I will absolutely let you guys know. But until then, thank you to those who joined us. Joe, check out the podcast. We talk about a lot of crap, and we're stupid. We're gonna be very. I'm gonna emphasize that latter part. We are very stupid. And I do tomorrow. We're gonna be doing. I believe we're gonna be doing the Video Game Awards. I'll be streaming that as well because why not? It will be later in the evening, so you can join us for that. Hear what we think
watch
about
a lot of
laughs will be had.
Laughs will be had, and I really hope
Control will somehow win.
I hope
the
they
year.
bring that guy back that was there the last 2 years. That like, what's his name?
The EA guy.
Yeah, the EA
French
guy. The French guy. I love him so much.
So Mal and I were talking.
Reggie's gonna be there.
No, don't you start another story. We have no more time for stories. I'm ending this here. It's done. It's done.